Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in for another sit down. I'm your host, Brian Pryor. Today, I'll be sitting down with none other than my line brother, Raymon Perkins, my back door to be specific. So, this should be a special sit down because, in anticipation for the fourth, I thought it would be a good idea to talk to a dad who's currently deployed and just hear from him. So let me go ahead and introduce Raymond. So Raymond is a product of Baton Rouge, and he is an alum of LSU and Southern University. He's a Louisiana National Guardsman who has been activated for multiple hurricanes, floods, COVID response most recently, and Raymond is presently deployed to the Middle East, where he's serving as battalion logistics officer. On the civilian side, Raymond is the chief compliance manager for a state program under the governor's office. In his free time, Raymond likes to travel, spend time with his wife and son, and give L's to his brothers on the dominoes and spades table. And by brothers, he means his blood brothers. So,
You too.
Raymond, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, brother. Good to hear from you.
Good to hear from you.
Yeah. I'm sorry. We had to go with the audio. It's connection's a little bad here. I don't want to mess up the aesthetic of your platform, but definitely wanted to check in.
Oh no, not a problem, man. I think we don't have to see you to get the knowledge or your perspective. So we should be fine.
Yeah.
So you want to tell the audience about your family? How old is Khalil?
Well, yeah. So Khalil is 2. He just turned 2 on the 16th. So got the pleasure of kind of ducking the terrible 2s. But nah. I know Corey isn't too excited. My wife's not too excited about me being gone. But he's kind of cleared the little first phase of tantrums and everything. So I think he's starting to come into his own a bit, and so that's exciting to experience when we get back. But but my wife and I, we've been married since 2016. We've been courting and dating and everything. We're going on. Hopefully, when I come back, right before we make 10 years in that regard. So we've been together a while, and family's progressing pretty well, in my opinion.
Yeah, so one thing about Raymond that I really admire is that Raymond is really organized, but 2, like Raymond is like one of those dads and one of those husbands who's just really, really like patient. So anytime I need like a level-headed voice, Raymond's usually the dad or usually the line brother that I call. So that's one thing I like to try to borrow from Raymond. So
okay. So I will say I am proud that I've gotten fewer of those calls from you. I know your tendency early on, like Brian liked that conflict. He enjoyed feeling that fire, and then y'all coming back together afterwards. But
I think it wears down on you.
With time and growth, I think you kind of take it more of a level-headed approach in a lot of things, and I've definitely noticed that.
Nah, for sure. So one thing that like Raymond, like I don't know how he knew this at 20 years old, but Raymond always say like Brian, we are the head of the household, so no matter what happens, it's up to us to bring it together. And that really does show itself in a lot of ways, and that just having that established can really guide like your decisions, big and small. So that's like one actual conversation that me and Raymond have had multiple times.
Right. And so I guess where that comes from, kind of back to, I definitely watched the video with that you and Ray put out, but kind of going back to that, it's like having that father in the house. Like I come from a family of married people. So like my dad, grandfather, my uncles, and then seeing the value of marriage, seeing the dynamic of those relationships, and knowing like not very many people at all in my family get divorced. They work through it, and a lot of it is driven by that strong central male lead taking that role within a family. And I've mirrored that. I always wanted it. I admired it. I saw that in my parents, And so even at a young age, even though, you know, college was college, everybody lived and had those experiences. But at the same time, I always had a purpose in knowing what I wanted out of life and what I wanted marriage to look like. And in turn, what I wanted raising kids to look like. And so even though we were, you know, bumping around trying to figure things out, I think that perspective of seeing it and being able to mirror it was a credit for me. And I think our kids, like your kids specifically, my kids as well, are going to have the benefit of that as well.
And it's so like interesting. I'm so glad I kind of get to talk to you because I've gotten to see like your entire journey. You know what I mean? I was there when you first met Corey. I was there like when you're like, oh nah, bro, I think I want to make it official. And likewise, bro, you saw, like you said, you saw us like kind of bump around in college, try to figure things out. And then like, you know, you meet your wife and you see that switch kind of happen where it's like, nope, it's time for me to step into my role as a man, you know, and really just kind of grow up. So, and we'll kind of get into a lot of that. So that's an introduction into Raymond and, you know, how we know each other and all of those things. One thing that Raymond just kind of touched on is all of the strong male figures that he really had kind of growing up. One in specific being his dad. So Raymond, I would love to like hear from you on like what are some things that you pull from your dad that you try to instill in Khalil or like just try to model as a dad.
All right. So when I think about like the big things that stand out to me for what I take from my dad, one is definitely his spirituality and his faith. So Reverend Perkins kept us grounded in that first and foremost. So it's like if you want a woman to lead you or you want to lead a family or you want to assume a traditional role, then in order for people to follow you, you first have to follow God. So I think that is a big thing that's been instilled with me from him that I've always admired and tried to emulate as best as possible. And then the other thing was just the way that he loves my mom. So like even growing up, it's all boys. I have two brothers. And even at an early age, it was always clearly dad's not going to be, you know, the softest or the most like pampering. But he would even limit like, you know, you're not going to run from mom to mom for comfort or lay up under her all the time because he would always say that's my woman. You have to go out in the world and get your own, right? So right. It was like for him, we always saw her pedestalized or his appreciation for her, their love together, and then she would of course in turn serve and care for him in the same ways. But that's why, like we talked about before, but even when we're in college bumping around trying to figure life out, I was looking for something specific because I saw the type of love and foundation and support and just what they were able to build together. And a lot of that was centered around just the way that my dad loved my mom. And I wanted to be able to find somebody that I could give that same caliber and quality of love to as well. And I hope to emulate that. So when Khalil comes up, he sees that in us, and then he knows the kind and caliber of woman that he wants, and he knows the way to display love and affection to that woman.
That's a really good point, man. And I've seen that kind of firsthand, not just like, you know, being around like your family, but then also, and like you said, like how you try to mirror that in your household. So I think that's a very good point. And, you know, dads, if you're out there listening, I can attest, you know, that philosophy actually works. You know, just make sure you're putting your wife or the lady in your life first, and you would be amazed at like how far like that will go and how much that kind of rubs off on like your kids. So, you know, it's a burden to bear, but you know, it's worth it. So, and that's actually a really good point because I feel like a lot of people in our generation have or take issue with, you know, who comes first, like your spouse or like your kids. And like you touched on, man, I feel like if you're doing it right and you're following God, that really clarifies it. And, you know, as a husband, you have to put your spouse first and your family's needs first, right? But you know,
right.
If it comes down to it, you have to put your wife your wife's, opinion and say so before your kids. They're
Right.
kids.
We joke about, like Corey and I will joke about it. It's like, yes, we're gonna have kids. We're the foundation. Our relationship is like the center. That's what it's built off of. And because we're solid, then we can build solid kids from that foundation. But we'll joke about it's kind of like us versus them sometimes. So Khalil's gonna want to have his way. He's gonna want to pit us against each other, even as a 2-year-old. But because we're solid and we're on the same page, then they can't break that up. And the other part to it is we have to put ourselves first, because we're in this relationship forever. It's like at the end of it, when the kids are grown and they're going to build their own lives and they're going to go and do the great things that we've set them up to do. I mean, after all that's said and done, we're going to have each other. And so if we're not solid and haven't invested enough time to prioritize each other, then that's when things start to get shaky again, because we're only in it for the kids. No, we're in it for each other. And then we're going to use that as a foundation to raise well-rounded kids off.
Yes. And that brings me to like another good point that I actually wasn't planning on kind of touching on, but like one thing that I think is important is establishing that balance, right? Between like, yes, you want to create memories and give your kids a good childhood, but like you said, you have to really make time for each other and kind of make, fellas, even when you get married, you still have to date your wife.
Yeah.
Raymond, you agree?
Yes, of course. Like the pursuit doesn't stop. Like I'm still vying for her attention. I'm still vying for her affection. I'm still making sure that we're still as in love now, if not more than the day we met. And yeah, that doesn't stop.
Doesn't stop, and you shouldn't want it to stop. So it just, you just gotta find stuff that you guys are still interested in, and just make time for it. And
right.
That's a big part of like one of the things that I can really appreciate, like our friend group. So me and Raymond like are a part of like a network of like friends, and like really just like we have a really good support system of dads that we can kind of lean on, and also like our wives kind of really get along. So anytime one of us needs to get out of the house, we can kind of tap on them, say like, hey, look, you guys mind watching the kids? And that's really important.
Yeah.
So, one thing that like I really wanted to talk about was like, what was it like for you to kind of step into the role of like, I'm a dad now? What was that? Can you just walk me through what was that like?
Okay, so it was interesting. So for me, I had a real kind of set view on what manhood is, a real set view on what a husband is and how to like navigate these things. Fatherhood kind of threw me out of my element a bit. Not saying I fumbled it all, but it made me recognize it takes a different type of strength. So for me, I'm an action-oriented person. If there's a problem, I'm a problem solver. I'm a solution finder. I haven't come across many things that I can't either, one, roll my sleeves up and work my way through, or two, sit down and put my mind to it and figure out a solution to, right? So those are things of personal strength that I rely on, that's how I navigate, life. But with parenthood, what I found is like a lot of it, sometimes it's out of your physical control. It's out of things that you can't just work your way through teaching lessons, or work your way through being patient and learning a child who doesn't necessarily have all the resources to communicate what their needs are. So for me, even as early as when we were pregnant, we went to the doctor. One of the ultrasounds showed that there was a slight complication or in the development issue that they weren't sure. They just wanted to monitor. So that's additional trips to maternal fetal medicine, additional ultrasounds. And so we were trying to, and that's an issue that comes up that I can't just find a solution to or work my way through. That's something that I have to, rely on a different type of strength. And then it becomes relying on the strength of my faith, and then being able to rationalize and figure out, you know, whatever the outcome of this is the baby that God intended for us, and we're going to raise specificity. That way I can look at my wife and say, we're going to be all right, and give her encouragement, and she believes and trusts in that and knows that it's coming from an authentic place. That way, you know, she's not additionally stressed, or she's not lead to additional complications as she continues to carry the baby through term. And then even when he does come out and working through, you know, speech therapy and physical therapy, I feel like for us personally, my journey through parenthood, it's been a lot of relying on a different type of strength, and then stepping more into that faith leader role, as well as just a solid as just being the strength of a natural strength of a man that I've relied on previously. So that's kind of been how I've experienced fatherhood thus far. And then it's also kind of a unique circumstance because it also has been balanced a lot with, you know, sacrifice and absence, and having to step away to serve the country and serve the state in different regards that way. But also knowing that I'm taking the sacrifice, so when we circle back around, I know my family is in a better position for having that short time apart.
And Raymond, you come from a military family, so I'm sure you can kind of look at like points in your childhood where your dad had to kind of step away. And it's really good. I think that you have like a model of sort, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So when we were younger, like my older brother was born in England because my dad was stationed in Europe. And so they ended up coming back stateside, and he was active duty, so it's a little bit different, but there was a level of separation there. It was like we lived in Slidell. He'd drive an hour and a half with traffic every day, work long hours, so he'd come back late up until I was in middle school. And in middle school, he made the decision to get out because they were about to station him somewhere else, and we're have to get up and move again. And I think it's balancing. Yes, there's a goal in place. I know I'll be away for a year time, let's say, but I know within that year, I know my son has a college fund. I know we're debt free. I know we have the opportunity to retire my mother-in-law early. I know that there's a lot of things that I can sacrifice a year away from my family for, in order to make sure that my family is taken care of for years to come. But then it's also not learning from my dad, not to take that time for granted, knowing when to walk away or knowing when it's not worth it anymore, because, you know, that's still time that I can't get back. I think it's crazy. In my mind, it was like, oh, my son, he's a year and a half. When it's time for me to leave, he'll barely even notice I'm gone. But that hasn't been the case at all. It's surprising how much kids retain. Like, my son from 4 months old, he slept through the night in his bed by himself, sleeps through the night. He gets from mom. He loves his sleep, right? But from the day I left, up until probably a good 3 or 4 months, like, he did not sleep through the night. He'd wake up crying, and couldn't find, not sick, not anything. We couldn't find anything outside of, you know, me being gone or him asking for dada. And I mean, we still talk on the phone and we still keep in touch, but it's knowing that, yes, it's a sacrifice, but I can't downplay it to feel like it's not something that's not time that's missed, or that's not experiences that are missed that will have an impact as well.
Yeah. And you know what that makes me think of? I'm sure a lot of other dads feel like this too, and I'll let you speak to it. But there's this moment when your kids are born, for a lot of folks, where like it's just you and your child, because they're passionate mom, right? And I know for me,
Right.
like, with both of my kids, there was a moment of like just a really spiritual moment where it's like God has entrusted me with this child that I'm holding, and it's up to me to protect them, right? And
Yes.
I would imagine, bro, that's probably got to be like one of the hardest parts about being away. Like, I hadn't even thought about like his sleep pattern being thrown off by dad not being there. So, like, how are you kind of managing like through that?
So yeah, definitely. I feel like it's innate. Like you said, when they hand you that baby, and mom is going through her recovery and everything, and so it's not, even if it's not the longest time, it feels like one of the most important times, because like you do have that connection to where I will protect this child, like I'll provide for this child will not have to want for anything because I'm here. And so that doesn't go away. But then when having to deal with when there is forced separation, it's still the same way. It's still figuring out how you can still provide and how you can still protect just from a distance. So I know now I work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and on Sundays I'm going to church, I'm cleaning up, and I'm trying to address everything else that I'm doing. But despite that schedule, I still am going to alter my sleep schedule to where I can go to sleep early and then wake up in the middle of the night, or adjust things to where I know every day he's going to see my face through video calls. He's going to hear my voice of recorded songs of me slinging him to sleep that my wife plays for him every day. Like he can look at pictures and point and say, "Dad, that's still," like, so where even though he's only 2, and to be honest, between everything else between COVID orders and this deployment and just the state our nation is in, and me having to respond to it because of the nature of my work, it's like I feel like I've been gone almost half of his life. Despite that, he knows who his dad is. He calls. We still have that connection, and then it's and then always looking forward and knowing what the end state is. So I know how much longer I have to when I can get back, and then I know that I won't be going anywhere. And I know that I will be present and be able to, just reinforce those bonds that we've been maintaining, but just in a more meaningful way, because it's minus that distance.
Yeah, and audience, yeah, Khalil is definitely a daddy's boy. Like before Raymond left, we all got together. Khalil like would not want to like leave your side, bro. So I feel you, bro.
Yeah, that's my mini me.
Yeah, no, that's your dad's. That's your dad's mini me. So Khalil looks just like your dad, man.
He does.
So outside of that, man, what are some things that you're really looking forward to once you get back?
Okay, so Corey actually asked me this question about like 2 to 3 months after me being gone, and it's funny. So of course, the first thing is the family. So it's my wife, my kid. Another thing is cooking. The food's not terrible here, but it's not back home food, and it's not, cooking was always like a hobby or a release for me. So it's something I've always enjoyed, not being able to cook or having access to, your own stove and pots and pans. That's something. But then the third thing, and maybe the most important, is indoor plumbing. Like, so the nature of being here, it's like at night it's 95 to 100 degrees. During the day it's 110 to 120 degrees, and so you have to drink a lot of water. So you may wake up in the middle of the night having to use the restroom. You got to get dressed, walk half a block, use the restroom, come back. When you shower, it could be midnight. You taking a shower, and when you leave that latrine to get back to your room, you're gonna be sweaty and covered in sand by the time you make it back. So it's a constant inconvenience and constant discomfort. But yeah, so it's like when you're home, there's definitely some things we take for granted until you kind of get put into a more austere environment.
That sounds brutal, man.
Yeah.
Those temperatures, like, they wrong, bro. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, before we get out of here, man, did you have like any like tips, like dad tips for other dads out there? Like any like tips or like some of your keys to success that you want to pass along?
Yeah. So my thing is, I know you kind of gave me a shout out on it before, but I think that is really a key to success is definitely patience. Patience, and then just always seeking to learn, always seeking for understanding, because every kid is different. I can definitely see my son and how he's developed and his mannerisms, his personality versus, I'm blessed to say that our friend group has a lot of kids around him. He has cousins that he sees on a regular basis to where he interacts with other kids, and each one of them are different. Each one has different tendencies. But the other part to it is if you really focus in on trying to understand that kid's needs or that kid's means of communication, then it really serves well in the long run. Because like I said before, he's going through speech therapy and everything, and for him, he was showing some of those terrible twos, giving a lot of crying, a lot of temper tantrums and everything else. But what we found out was, to be honest, he was smart enough to know what he wanted. He knew what he needed. He knew but he just didn't have the words to verbalize it or the communication skills to express that. So using speech therapy and doing baby sign language and giving him the power to be more communicative really addressed a lot of that, to where he doesn't fuss or cry nearly as much, because now he has a means and an outlet to express it. But if you let it get frustrated, because I know parenthood's hard. There's times where you just want to pull your hair out, but the babies do too, because they have their own issues that they're learning through and trying to build to become their own person and be able to voice their own wants and desires. So I think being patient throughout the process and always seeking to understand, so you can help kind of guide and nurture your kid to be the most successful version of what they can. I think that's a key for me so far.
Dude, for sure. And I would challenge other dads out there to know what your strengths and know your weaknesses. I can say, I know for me, patience is probably like the thing that I've had to work on the most, just because I didn't have that model for me in those same ways. So it's all about surrounding yourself with tools and resources and surrounding yourself with people that you can pull from. For me, that's Raymond. So
right,
dads out there, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and do not be afraid to reach out to other dads that you respect and say, like, hey, I might be having this issue. What do you think about it? Or what do you kind of do when these kind of things pop up in your house? And also, don't be afraid to just tune in. We'll keep talking about like these times.
We could be that resource.
All right. So I think we're gonna leave out on that. Raymond, thank you for tuning in today, man. We certainly appreciate all of the sacrifice. Hopefully this kind of gives a face to like the sacrifices that that allow for us to have the freedoms that we have, the conveniences that we have. And thank you again, LB.
Yeah, appreciate it. Love you, bro.
Love you, bro.